what India plans to do and how India plans to work on the AI summit that our Prime Minister had offered to host at the time of the Paris AI Summit. Many of my colleagues have been part of various panels and other discussions in the past 3 days on a range of issues. Most issues about AI and India's approach to AI would have been covered in many of these discussions. The one thing which is very clear about AI is that we have news every week, sometimes news every other day, and we need to keep catching up. And part of the way that we have approached it in the past little more than a year since the India AI mission was announced in March of 2024, and before that, when India started off on having a national strategy on AI with a paper from the MeitY and so on, has fundamentally been that we've been flexible in our approach to this. Right from the beginning, we decided not to be doctrinaire, not to be dogmatic and say that, safety is the biggest concern, we have to regulate, we have to look at these issues. We felt right up front, and this is something which the Prime Minister, and right from the top, this was a feeling that this is an opportunity. It depends on how well we use it, how we seize it, and we have to look at what the challenges are and see how we address our challenges in making most of this opportunity. So from that perspective, I think we've been open on this entire issue, and we've also followed what the global governance has been sort of looking at on the AI issue. We've been in the forefront of that. In 2023, we were the chair of the GPAI, of the Global Partnership on AI. You would recall that we hosted 2 summit events here in Delhi, both of them which brought in a lot of energy, particularly of innovation, with lots of startups and others getting into the act in a big way. It is with the same spirit that we have approached the 3 AI summits that have been held so far. The first one, the AI Safety Summit at Bletchley Park, late in 2023, subsequently the summit in Seoul, and of course the summit earlier this year in February in Paris, where India was invited to be the co-chair. As you can see, the theme of these summits have moved from safety to action in the Paris summit. Now we believe it is time to start talking about impact. It's been almost about 2 to 3 years of this journey, and I think many people are impatient to see actual impact of what AI can do and what AI can deliver and what can actually happen. And when we say impact again, I think we need to look at it in a positive framework in terms of what it can actually deliver. The expectations and hopes in terms of what AI can do for India, a country like India, and likewise the rest of the global south in terms of raising the overall productivity in various real sectors of the economy, in ensuring that there is greater efficiency and effectiveness in governance, and thereby sort of significantly improving economic growth and promoting prosperity is the one angle that I think is foremost in India's mind, and how we can actually be disruptive in enabling this through innovation and startup-driven approach is what India is seriously looking at, and I think this is an approach that needs to be looked at in the rest of the world as well. Initially, of course, there were a number of fears about the overall costs, whether it's affordable for a country like India, whether we can actually get the compute capacity together, whether we can get the human resources together to actually build models, whether we can create applications which can be sort of deployed in the field and so on. But if you look at the India AI mission and the 7 verticals there, I think it addresses the entire slew of issues. There is something in it literally for everybody. In terms of enterprises, researchers, and others wanting access to AI compute, which is a primary requirement. Clearly, there is a vertical which addresses that, and already we have about 15,000 GPU worth of compute already available, plus more to be added in due course. Likewise, if you look at what is happening on the models front, we should very shortly be announcing which one will be the first of the India Foundation models to be built. There is work going on there. If you come to the issue of data, and data is a critical element of what needs to be done, we launched the AI Kosh as a platform where about 300 plus data sets are already being shared and more are being added as we speak. And if you come to the issue of applications, and which is where I think most of the action will lie in a country like India, we again find that there has been tremendous enthusiasm, more than 900 applications for the first round and more than a similar number in the second round. Currently, most of them are confined to areas of governance which the government is interested in, but increasingly we believe it needs to be thrown open to look at other challenges which address society at large or the economy at large, and we'll have to see how we take it forward. So all of this means that we have addressed each of these segments. Likewise, in the skilling segment, we have to look at it all the way at the top of the line in terms of having, very, very competent and capable PhD candidates who can work on many of these research projects, and which is what has driven most of the AI research around the world, and we are supporting that, all the way down to ITI polytechnic level students who can help with data annotation, and there could be a large number of jobs there. And the real story, I think, for India's ITES industry, in a sense, it's for them possibly another Y2K moment in terms of ensuring that most of the applications which are being developed are effectively laid out and delivered and actually deployed in a number of organizations, whether they are government organizations, enterprises, firms, and so on. So that would be a huge opportunity for them. So in that sense, if you really look at what it all offers for India, and through India to the rest of the world, given our overall DPI story, eventually, probably, as the Prime Minister indicated and as the Minister for Electronics and Information Technology also spoke about earlier in Parliament, the issue is really, I think, eventually to have a DPI layer kind of interacting with AI and enabling that to actually be used more widely so that there's even more innovation, not just at the application level, but at the agentic level, in order to take it to the next stage of how it can be applied. And this is clearly something that we can share with the rest of the world where it is needed. Data center capacities will have to come up. India is a good location where this can be created. Likewise, the compute capacity where it comes up will need to be shared with other places in the world where it requires to be created. We've had discussions with the United Nations as well to see how this could be enabled. So in that sense, India not just wants to use AI as something that it can do for itself, but wants to sort of take a leadership position on behalf of the Global South in seeing that it is deployed across the world. So these are the efforts that we are making, and I think the key element of the way the government is working on AI is that it's a complete collaborative approach. No part of the India AI mission actually works in isolation of either private sector, academia, or civil society. We have continuous engagements on each of these verticals, and it's been a collaborative effort in which we would like to continue. And it's that theme, in terms of bringing in more and more stakeholders, that is the theme we would like to take into the AI Impact Summit, which we would host early next year, and ensure that multiple stakeholders become part of this, and we should be able to actually showcase all that has been done here and in other parts of the world in terms of impact by then. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for that powerful keynote which sets the stage for the panel titled India's AI Summit, The Road Ahead. Please welcome to the stage for this panel Sunil Abraham, Public Policy Director, Data Economy and Emerging Tech, Meta India, Henri Verdier, French Ambassador for Digital Affairs, Nitarshan Rajkumar, Vice Chair, EU's General Purpose AI Code of Practice. This session will be moderated by Shalini Kapoor, volunteer, Ekstep Foundation and author, AI for You. Can we have the video, please? Shalini, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. It's definitely Saturday evening, and I'm sure everybody wants to go home. We have debated, talked, learned, networked, collaborated, and made our plans for next week as well of what meetings to continue. But yes, right now we have the esteemed panel with us. So let's discuss about the AI Summit for Impact, which is going to happen next year, and do a bit of brainstorming or thinking in a bit of unstructured way. We don't want to be structured like, end of Saturday. So I think I'll do a quick round first with each one of you, which is, go back in some time and then quickly go ahead in some time, right? Sorry, this is not the questions which I had sent to you. Yeah. So you go back, you are sitting in, and almost all of you, I think at least 3 of you were also in the Paris Summit. So you have to go back and you have to think in the Paris Summit, and definitely the first question is to you, Krishnan sir. You were sitting there and you were thinking about India. This is what I will not do, and this is what I will do.
Interesting. I think what we will do, I think there are 2 things we will certainly do. I think one thing is collaborate and make sure that in each of these areas that concern us, we work with as broad a cross-section as we can actually collect and put together. I think this is something which is fairly apparent from across the world. I attended a G7 plus a few other countries, a meeting in Rome last year, and I think the emphasis there was very clear that unless all of these like-minded countries, democratic countries, collaborate and put together enough capacities in every sense of the word, whether it is compute, whether it is model creation, applications, skilling, all of that needs to come together in order to enable the delivery to across the world and to make sure that it is democratic and inclusive. And that's clearly India's position on that. It needs to be democratic, it needs to be inclusive, it needs to get everyone in, and whatever we can do on this bit, we will certainly do. So this is what we want to do. Now, what we will not do is throttle an opportunity. So that is something we are fairly clear about. Interestingly, many people initially it was even the word regulation was a not so good word. But fundamentally, people assume that regulation means that you'll promptly throttle innovation. But I think as we are thinking about it, we had put out a consultation paper which had been prepared, a report which had been prepared by a subcommittee headed by the principal scientific advisor on AI governance and what approach we take. And we got some very interesting inputs on that paper. And some of it actually showed us that the regulation that we are thinking about shouldn't be just about regulating and putting guardrails on AI and don't do this and don't do this, but actually find ways to enable it. And there could be certain regulatory measures we need to take to make the path for application of AI or development of AI, deployment of AI much easier. So I think there were some very interesting suggestions around that. So that way we are fairly clear that we don't want to throttle the opportunity.
Great. not throttling the opportunity. And also, I think what you're talking about is that for AI adoption to happen, you need to have the right framework so that people know, like, when road safety was created, pedestrian did not know, the car driver did not know what to do. But, a certain bit of rules kind of enabled more highways to happen, more pedestrians to come over safely. So thank you, Andre. You have to, go back into the past and imagine the future and say what is it that you definitely do not want to get repeated, and what is your expectations?
But that's not the question. The question is, something was born in Bletchley Park. Korea did build upon this. We did build upon Korea. India will go further. So the question is not, you cannot repeat the French summit. By the way, there is something you cannot do. That's to propose to India to co-chair the summit, because you chair the summit, so you cannot co-chair the summit. So we did try to do something. So in Bletchley Park was convened around one important question, that is are there existential risks? I think that now every government knows that they have to consider this question and to be prepared mentally for this. So Korea did speak a bit more about innovation. We tried to propose a broad conversation regarding opportunities and risks. That's not by coincidence that President Macron and President von der Leyen did announce engagement. That's because we wanted to show that we believe in this technology and we want to develop innovation. But we wanted also to, our conviction is that innovation doesn't automatically lead to progress. Innovation is innovation, for good or bad. If you want innovation to become progress, you need good policies, you need governance that is not always regulation, but sometimes regulation. You need investment, we need common knowledge and common resources, and open source, and cooperation, and competition, and so you have to design something. And probably the conversation in Paris was about this. And I feel that we did succeed at least to frame this conversation. So now we have to invade this framework and to work and to propose and to find solutions, and maybe to pass the mic to my neighbor. Maybe I want to commend the Indian project to focus on impact, and it gave me a title. That's just to say that maybe there are existential risks, but there are also existential needs, and we need to address existential needs. If we don't use AI to improve by, 10% the agricultural efficiency in developing countries, we are criminals. If we don't use AI to build better education systems, we are criminals. But for this we needed to start from existential risks because they do exist, and then to propose a broader conversation, and then to focus on, so that like in rugby, in France we play rugby, so we pass the ball to the, to the other one.
Yeah, so design and how we do it well is important. So I'll come to you, Nitarshan. To look into the future, we always have to look at history. And you had really good feedback from what happened, what did not happen. We would like to hear your insights.
Yeah, and I should start by saying that I'm speaking in an individual capacity. I have a bit of a luxury in being able to do that. I'm not in the British government anymore. So this is purely my own views and reflections. What happened at Bletchley was that, in the months coming after ChatGPT, there was a realization that this is a technology that's moving faster than any that we've encountered before, and that government needed to act differently to how it's responded to other challenges in technology. It needed to be much faster. It needed to get ahead of the problem, potentially some of the most extreme problems, the existential or the catastrophic risks. And so, in the short span of about 4 months, Rishi Sunak and the team that we had pulled together this global summit where we invited leading countries, leading companies working at the frontier of AI to sort of acknowledge that the risks were serious. We'd never seen this before, where the countries had acknowledged collectively that the risks were real and that we needed to take action on them together, that it was a shared problem for all of humanity. and so you saw that in terms of like the US and China being on the same stage and signing the same documents, making these sorts of acknowledgements. That was an explicit aim for us to like set the groundwork, set the norms that this is something that all of humanity had to face together rather than independently, parcel off and try to, or just not make any progress on it all. So getting global agreement on the risks being real was important for us. And we were also really focused on building state capacity. So at the summit, we announced the creation of our AI Safety Institute. And we saw that many other countries as well have followed in that path. The United States has one, or like a dozen other countries have one as well. There's an international network of AI safety institutes as well. Yeah, like everyone on the stage, I suppose, has an AI Safety Institute in some form or another, which is really focused on like the technical evaluation of the risks, right? If we don't understand what the risks are in a quantitative level, decision makers, senior political leaders are not going to be able to take the right actions. So we were really focused on just like understand what the risks are. Like one, acknowledge that the risks are real. Two, like do the technical work of measurement, of science to understand what the risks were. And then get the rest of the global community to take that forward. And sort of the third thing that we wanted is a forward process, right? You can have like a one-off event to talk about safety, but we also wanted a forward process at the political level for talking about AI, and that's continued in this form in the summit series. And it's also continued in terms of an international scientific report. So not just building political consensus around what the risks are, but building the scientific understanding of the risks, again, with a much broader set of countries, including involvement from like the UN, to mirroring what we've done in climate change. So across all of these things, it was about kickstarting a conversation that was not happening before at an international level, and that we were very worried would just never happen if there wasn't sort of like a strong political impetus or like a shock to the system to make people start talking about this.
Right. Thanks. Interesting. So I'll come to you, Sunil. I know you weren't there at the summit, but your organization was. So, do let us know that, if it is impact and it is for public good, how does open systems work? And how do you think we can expect the private players for AI for social good and contributing in this summit for all the citizens?
Thank you so much, Shalini, for the question, and thanks to Carnegie for having me again. On the question of impact, and especially in the Indian context, I think we've already seen several examples. I won't go into what Nandan Nilekani talks about, which is the use cases. I'll stick to some of the scientific advancements that have been made. So what the team at Sarvam did is they looked at all the available proprietary and open models and realized that for Indic languages, we as Indians were paying a token tax. The tokenizer wasn't efficient enough. And in Llama, it was 6 times the efficient tokenizer that they developed was 6 times faster than our tokenizer and 4 times faster than the OpenAI tokenizer. So in OpenHati, you can see core engineering contributions being made by the Sarvam team. AI for Bharat took another model of ours. Meta has a huge range of open source projects, more than 900 open source projects. Seamless for MT, and they trained it in 12 Indian languages, and now they have a much more performant text-to-speech and speech-to-text model called Indic Seamless. Unfortunately, Meta did not provide that model under a commercially compatible license, so it still can be used mostly by government and not by others. And most recently, we've been watching the expression of interest for indigenous models. And I think it is clear from the design of that EOI that they don't want to have derivative works from globally available open models. So we're going to watch the open winners a little more closely, and we're going to wonder how many of them are going to use PyTorch, which PyTorch is an open source project from Meta. And what's interesting about that open source project in particular is Meta became more radical on open source than any of the other big tech companies that I know. They took this crown jewel, if you may, and they donated it to Linux Foundation. So if somebody has a sovereignty anxiety, if they're using PyTorch, they need not have that anxiety because the trademark, the copyright of the code and the trademark no longer belongs to Meta. It is handled by Linux Foundation. So I think there's a lot of impact happening. It's all invisible. I'll give one last example of Indian government policy. The CSIR has an open access mandate. That means the $500 million that is spent by CSIR every year will produce open access journal articles or be published in faster moving sciences onto just archive. And that is $500 million worth of training data for all models. So open source lifts all boats, just like our projects helps everybody. The contribution that the Indian government makes of $500 million, just from CSIR, I'm not counting the other funding from the Indian government. That's $500 million worth of training data being contributed by the Indian government to the whole planet. So there's a lot of impact happening. We're just not sitting and doing the bean counting yet. I think some of us should start doing the bean counting and checking and quantizing this impact.
Yeah, I hope you are not being asked those things internally. Okay. So I think we have kind of, understood what we want out of the summit. And I'll come back to the audience in some time and kind of, take inputs to you. Secretary Sir is here, so, some inputs from the audience would also be welcome. Let's get into some fun. Let's do some rapid fire. And I'll start with you, Nitarshan. At the summit, something for all or a large-scale challenge which is contributed by all?
Could you clarify with that? Could you clarify what you meant by that? Like AI?
Is the summit going to be something for all?
Yes.
Or is it going to be a large-scale challenge contributed by all? What do you choose? You can choose one.
So if I understand what you're saying, right, like I think the way we did our summit in Bletchley Park was we had a very small set of people and countries and companies that were invited, which I think is a different approach to where the summits have gone for like various reasons. But we were focused again on like risks that were emerging at the frontier from a small set of companies, from a small set of countries. And in some ways that maybe mirrors other areas of historical technological challenges like nuclear weapons or climate change to some extent, where the responsibility maybe, or like the risk that's emerging comes from a small set of actors. So that made sense when the focus was on safety. And I'll leave it to the others to talk about the shifting focus to opportunity, but there, like, everyone wants the opportunity, everyone wants the upside of the summit. And so for the Indian summit, I suppose if the focus is on like impact, if the focus is on the broad distribution of benefits, then like having a broad set of people involved and like feeling like they have a stake in this conversation is going to be quite important. But for the safety conversation, maybe in some ways we want everyone to acknowledge that the risks are there, but it's the actions of a small set of people that's actually going to matter. A small set of companies, like on the order of 10 companies in the world currently today, that will affect what the safety issues look like for the next handful of years.
I'll come to you, Krishnan sir. Do you think summit should be something for all, or we take one large-scale challenge which everybody contributes in, and you can choose one?
I choose something in between, I guess.
That's not the option.
Honestly, something for all is I think much as we would love to offer something for all, it may not work. But then, given the scale of challenges and everything, it can't be reduced to just one challenge. So probably, in a sense, it'll be more than one challenge, and thereby, everyone contributes and gets something out of it.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, just one other thing is I think whether people think Bletchley was a success or not, if one were to interpret it as a success, which I obviously do, it's because we had a clear focus, right? It was like we were really trying to make progress on a very narrow set of things rather than trying to solve every single problem that existed in the world around AI. The problems of AI are as multifaceted as the problems of climate change or like the problem of global governance in general, right? And so that's like an almost intractable, infinite set of problems to try to solve. And because we were able to make progress because we picked a small set of things that we initiated conversations on, that we initiated like international processes and institution building on, that we wanted to make like concrete progress on. So it feels like for like the summit process going forward, even if there's like a broader focus on opportunity or on like distribution of benefits, it still might. I mean, I'd love to hear others' views on this too, but it still feels like you need to pick like 2 or 3 things that you want to make concrete progress on in those areas, which could be like the commercial deployment of data centers, right, for the rest of the world, and access of AI to the rest of the world in like some really measurable, concrete form, and then just like do as much as you can on that, rather than try to solve everything about global AI governance as a whole. But
Okay. Good viewpoint. And the next question is for Sunil and Andre. 100 agents for all Indian citizens or one large LLM for India?
Yeah, that's easy for me to answer because there is a official position on this from Mark Zuckerberg himself. So he doesn't want to stop at 100. He said, let a million flowers bloom. So that's the vision that he has for the world. He wants a million models. He doesn't want one ring to rule them all. He thinks that's some kind of dystopia to have that kind of centralized control. So I wanted to go back into history and sort of go into the future that is already technically there, but perhaps not there because we haven't solved market incentives and some last sort of policy stumbling blocks. I go all the way back to 1440, the year 1440, and the city of Florence. The richest man, Cosimo Medici, was a lover of books, and he's 30 years old, and his book collection is just 8 books, and he grew up with 3 books. Today, we have a world where all the knowledge of the world could be offline in a 3 GB weight file or 1 GB weight file on a mobile phone of a villager in North Karnataka who does not have proper internet connectivity, and he can choose the novel of his choice, Munshi Premchand, and have it read to him in Kannada and in the voice of his favorite film actor, Dr. Rajkumar. So that's every single Indian with a mobile phone is potentially richer than Cosimo Medici in the 15th century. So that's the future that ideally we should build for, and that future won't happen if we put a limit of just 100 AI models and so on. That's why going closer to Mark's vision of million is a much more effective route than sticking to 100. Sorry.
Yeah. So there's a lot of information, and that's why I think the AI models are also moving towards reasoning, because the reasoning part is something which is the dearth of knowledge and the plethora of, like, there's so much information available that's not the bottleneck anymore. Andre, do you think and this is a question to you, do you think the summit should focus on economic impact of AI or citizens and their benefits with AI?
So, briefly, first, why do we need such summits, by the way? We need this because we are living an arms race. That's a race. Companies are racing, governments are racing. And in this context, if we don't have a common consensus on some principles, it becomes a race to the bottom. Because, for example, in Europe, we will be, you know this, we'll be very attached to human dignity, privacy, safety, maybe a bit more than the Valley, but if we adopt alone those principles, we destroy our industry. So we need the planet to be on the same line. And the unique, universal body is the UN. So whatever we do in our summits, we need to try to feed the UN processes, to strengthen the UN processes. That's why I feel that that's great if every year there is a meeting of head of states with a lot of researchers, civil society, companies, with a focus on some important point. Because we have this global conversation and we put the light on an important point. And at the end, we join the UN process and we negotiate, even with people that don't think like us, and we negotiate. So that's important. So it does answer to your first question. It does answer a bit. By the way, it depends on the priority of the hosting government. Doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, there is a global digital compact, there are negotiations, there will be the political body within the UN system, and we still have the GPIs that we did create together, etc. Very briefly regarding the question about 1 or 1,000 or 1 million, for us, and I feel that India will share this view, that of the utmost importance to be sure that at the center of this revolution there is enough commonality, open source, common knowledge, science, and not just a privatized knowledge in 3 or 4 companies. We cannot afford a world with a domination of few models. It will ruin every value chain because they would take control of every value chain. They will force a revenue sharing. So whatever happens, we will stand for the existence. I don't deny the interest of, if you want, of some proprietary model, but at the center, like in science, you could not find new patents without public science. You need public science to make patents. So, and that's why we did launch the current AI Foundation at the Paris Summit to have a vehicle to finance not one more open source LLM. We don't need to. You have yours, but to help tactically where it is necessary. Maybe we need to develop new technology for secure access to edge data, protecting privacy. Maybe we need some data sets. Maybe we need some tools. So it will be a contribution to the world of open knowledge regarding AI.
Yeah, I think you also brought a good point of consensus building for the public good, and then how we need to work towards that. So yeah, that's a very important point. I think you were also hinting to the vow, or I would say the investments which we can take for the summit, and I believe there were some investments announced, and Nitarshan pointed it to that the Safety Institute was announced, and at every summit there have been investments which have been announced or metrics being discussed. So let's talk a bit on that. Secretary Sir, how do you think you see the investments? Do you think investment announcement or metrics of the India mission is what should be shared in the summit, or are you thinking that this could be another place to get incentive investments decided on some common theme, and we should do the call out because it's like still 7 months away? So what's your take on the investments in this space?
I think there are 2 or 3 things on investments which are important. See, if you chase investment numbers for the sake of chasing investment numbers, you get announcements, they may not get implemented. So I think we should be a little wary on that. I've run investor summits, and where our focus is much more on conversion, saying how many of what is announced and what is stated actually gets converted into on-ground investment. So from that perspective, this is all about impact, and I think it will be a good occasion to take stock, not just in India but across the world, of what has happened so far in terms of impact, and what do we expect in the next stages in terms of what is it that we would see as real impact, and what would be the commitments made towards actually achieving the desired impact. I think that is the way you need to really look at it, and that would be really one of the areas that we would be seriously focusing on. The investments are an aside, because they just, a number gets thrown out. Then I've read very learned commentariat on trying to compare completely numbers which it's not even apples and oranges. It's not even comparing different types of fruits. They're comparing something else with something else altogether, saying this number is so big and this number is so small. I think that's not the way it is. The numbers and investments are very, very contextual and very specific to what they are meant to be. So I would caution against an approach which just focuses on that, and I would look at what we have done so far and what we aim to do next.
Okay. Andre, would you like to throw some light in terms of the Paris Summit, especially the investments which were announced, and what has been the follow through of them? How are they turning into? It was an action summit. How are they turning into tangible goals which people are doing, and where are they today?
Okay. First, I take your point, and we didn't decide to invest because of the summit. We decided to invest because we want to have a seat on the driver's seat and not on the passenger seat. So that's our story and our industrial policy. But we decided to announce the investment during the summit. That was because we wanted to show that we believe in innovation, that we are not just speaking about regulation. Maybe that you cannot regulate if you don't innovate. That's an important thing. So we wanted to prove that we are making both. Maybe because I thought that you were preparing a question regarding innovation and regulation. So I did prepare an answer, but in one sentence. I think that regulation is not the enemy of innovation. And I want to ask the room, can you, quote, tell me one innovation that was born in the Wild West? Was something important conceived, any innovation in the Far West, in the Wild West? No. Innovation needs science, policies, infrastructure, research, and needs some politics. So just that's a small contribution. Where we are, that's quite simple. President Macron did not announce a governmental investment. He did announce some private investments in the French economy, mostly in data center or infrastructure. So they are delivering because that are private decisions. President von der Leyen did announce 200 billion euros in European investment. We are working hard between the 27 to discuss, to prepare, but we are working. So because the negotiation started in Paris and is currently ongoing.
Yeah. Innovation needs a lot of politics, or some politics. That's a takeaway.
Maybe, of course, obviously, you can have bad regulation.
Yeah.
And you can make mistake. You can also make bad investment. But I never read anywhere that investment was the enemy of innovation. That's...
Yeah, thank you. Sunil, I'll come to you. There was a lot of discussion in the last 2 days that, and there are a lot of private players who are very keen to invest in the summit, and they're keen to run tracks, run use cases, challenges. So, how do you see the investments, or for the public good, for the citizens of India during the summit?
Yeah, I'd like to sort of get to the monitoring and evaluation piece of the investment life cycle. And I've seen some analysis where the health of the Indian AI sector is measured by the number of patents that we have in AI. And there, I'd like to provide a small critique to that approach. If what we were evaluating were telecom technologies like 5G and so on, then counting the number of patents makes a lot of sense. Even if we ignored Prime Minister Modi's embrace of open source at Paris, and we said we're only going to do it proprietary. And even if we counted the patents for a proprietary AI ecosystem, that's the wrong measure. Because the royalty that the patents earn is more important than the number of patents themselves. Because you could just have a patent, but nobody is using your patent and nobody is licensing your patent. So I wanted to sort of connect this to how the Indian government could shape the market in a very significant way. And governments across the world do shape markets in a very straightforward manner through procurement policy and procurement behavior. India has, of course, a much more sophisticated approach to this, which is we invest in DPIs. DPIs are built on DPGs, or digital public goods. Open source AI is just another DPG, so that part is fine. But we could update the procurement approach as well. There is the old 2014 government policy for open source in government. If we updated that policy and either had a mandate for open source in certain places, or a preference for open source in certain places, or some kind of test for people in government to decide, should I go with open source in this use case or not, That would be an incredible way in which the procurement budgets of the government would shape the ecosystem, would incentivize open science. So Meta giving a small grant to IIT Jodhpur and funding a set of PhD students to produce research, that's always going to be outshined 1,000 times by what the government does. And that's why I'm hoping that the Indian government can continue on that path of DPIs and sort of look at its procurement of technology a little more closely and perhaps update the 2014 policy. Thank you.
Sure. So I think I'll have one last question before I open it up to the audience for questions. If you can just look at the AI summit as like 7 months run up, and then there is also post that time. What would, and I would go to Krishnan sir, to you first. That what could be the Mangalyaan moment of India AI summit? And I'm not calling it DeepSeek for a reason.
Okay, now that's a tough one. I mean, I think to anticipate or to expect what would be that moment. But I think the one area in technology that India seems to have led in, as Sunil was just talking about, is creating DPIs. And if we are able to sort of intertwine AI with what happens in a DPI and either create a DPI which has AI also as one of the resources which is available and can be used more widely, that in a sense is a potential Mangalyaan moment. But if you ask me honestly, I wouldn't like to wait seven months for it.
Yes, the time is now. Absolutely. So,
what we can predict is that probably something unattended will appear before your summit. Probably something we don't prepare.
Yeah, great. So I'll open it up to the audience now. Please feel free to raise your hands, and there will be mics reaching you. And you can choose the question whom you have, or you can make it general. I think the first hand was raised at the center, yeah. And then we'll come to you. So.
Yeah, Mr. Krishnan, we are talking of future AI ahead, and our main manpower is agriculture, railway, and defense. How we are going to deal these three main manpower with AI inputs? Whether we will have a like drone or in agriculture, tractor are being AI driven. Same is in defense services. Do we are really prepared to input our AI in full swing, or just it will be slow type?
I think in each of these sectors there are efforts on currently as to what would be the most effective deployment of AI. In agriculture, Krishi AI is already being applied. We are working with a range of stakeholders. The Agriculture Ministry is working intensely on it to actually look at range of data sets to figure out what better advice can be given to farmers, how you can actually leverage all this information, run it through a model, and then tell farmers and give them very specific advice related to where they are and how yields can go up. Similarly, our armed forces are also working on how AI can help them increase effectiveness. Likewise, in every other sector. So I think the work which is happening in this field is significant. And the other interesting thing is that even within government, I mean, forget about what is happening outside government, there's a lot of curiosity. But we did find that even within government, there's a lot of curiosity and willingness to learn about AI. On Karmayogi Bharat, the IGOT platform, which is the training platform, the most popular course is yoga at the workplace. And the second most popular course is AI. So most people have done, I think at last count, close to 1 million people had taken this course on AI at the workplace.
So there is reality. People say AI is hype, but yoga is reality. You better exercise and keep moving. We had a question here, yes.
Thank you. There was a mention earlier in the discussion about the realization that AI actually also has an existential threat dimension. And the National Intelligence Council of the US, they actually have a kind of what they call the concept existential risk, and AI is one of them. My question actually is this here, that, if AI is such a thing that is being talked about, why there are different processes? G7 runs its own process. The Bletchley process started there. The UN Secretary General also has a panel on AI, and there was a global compact on AI. Is there a contradiction as to why different processes are necessary if the aim actually is to recognize or realize that AI, if it goes haywire, actually poses existential risk? That's my one question. The second one is that, I think Secretary talked about data center in India. Now, as one sees, it's coming out in the papers. One, of course, is because of global warming and India being impacted by that. So already there are prediction about the shortage of power supply. And data centers, wherever they're being set up, they are huge consumers of energy. And even the US, they're actually finding that it's not enough. So are we in a position today, or it becomes a vicious cycle, are we in a position today to actually meet that demand which the data centers will actually have? At the same time, the challenge of global warming, and considering the coal actually still our main source of energy generation, whether we are getting into a kind of a vicious cycle. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's take the first question first, and maybe Nitarshan, you can take it, because it was an evolution. The summit was an evolution, and maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah. In some senses there is a contradiction, but that's because people have different worldviews. And our worldview was one of extremely rapid AI progress being quite possible. This isn't even that outlier of a view. If you listen to company CEOs, all of them think that they'll have systems that are as capable as expert level humans on almost any task by the end of the decade. And so there's profound consequences to that. And it's not just about existential or catastrophic risk. Even if we manage those, society is going to transform in enormous ways. And it's a lot easier to coordinate and take action when you have a small set of actors, especially the ones that are maybe closest to the frontier, right? That are able to shape the direction of the technology. And, maybe many others have different perspectives on how the technology will progress. And so they think that the existing processes, which can happen in parallel through the UN or other fora, slower moving processes that are consensus amongst a much broader set of actors is an appropriate way to go. So there's a contradiction in worldviews, but it's fine that both of these things are happening simultaneously, right? They inform each other. At Bletchley, we launched a scientific report as well, chaired by Yoshua Bengio, and that included a much wider set of countries than the ones that were invited to Bletchley as well, and again, including the UN. So there's a sense of finding ways to get convergence between the rapid, opinionated processes and things that are more traditional, broad consensus-based processes as well. But my worldview is definitely we'll see extremely rapid progress, and so things are going to the existing systems I think are going to have to act much faster over the next 2 to 5 years as well.
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Maybe I can add that your question is a very interesting and genuine question. So I will genuinely answer. The international order is not perfect, and by far and large. So today, as you did notice, there is no such thing as a world government. So we are quite 200 sovereign states, and we try to negotiate a bit. So if we decide that we want to forbid something, for example, I said yesterday, I think that we should ban AI that can evolve alone and duplicate themselves. That would be a good security. Let's avoid to have a model that can self-evolve and modify. And so we need to forbid to this company to do this. This company might be in the US, so we need the US administration to forbid this in their internal law. So we need them to sign a treaty, for example. But can you negotiate a treaty with China and the US and Russia and Europe? So that's long. And usually what diplomacy for other topics, nuclear, bioweapon, etc. First, we need to frame a consensus, to frame even the debate, to build consensus on some solutions, to progress slowly, to find allies, to build coalitions. You cannot decide tomorrow this is forbidden. Because there is no world government, world police, and world justice. And that's what we decided after World War II, to respect the sovereignty of sovereign states.
Sure. Yeah. The second question, yes.
The second question on data centers, I think, again, a good question because it is a matter of concern. It's not a straightforward equation. And data centers, honestly, even before the AI thing came up, with cloud computing and everything else, there was a lot of pressure to add data centers. And initially, I am aware that there was a lot of resistance to setting up more because they guzzle a lot of power and they don't provide much employment at all. So there was always this feeling saying, why should we put up a data center where we are? But I think if you have to take advantage of this technology, it is something which needs to be done now. So which means we have to figure out ways of doing it. And India has an advantage in terms of having a lot of green power, but green power necessarily is not very firm power. So I think from where we had more data centers to at locations along the coast where you have the submarine cables ending, you really need to move data centers to locations where power is available, particularly green power is available. And two, we have to figure out ways of storage of green power. I mean, that becomes very important. And three, I think, it can't be a 0 or 1 binary. That is, you're very green or you're not green at all. I think somewhere in between, because you see one advantage with data center and the use of power for this purpose is that I think they can afford to pay premium rates. So if there are slightly more expensive solutions, including possibly using to some extent, say in certain cases, gas, because then gas is probably 60% cleaner than coal. So before you completely transition to other forms of storage, then at least, nighttime power or off-season power can come from gas and they can pay. So there are solutions, technological solutions which can be worked out, and my ministry is in consultation with the Ministry of Power and other ministries to try and address this issue. And an even bigger issue than this is also the infrastructure of substations where it's available to connect up data centers and so on. So a number of issues need to get resolved. Yeah.
Thank you. We have a lady at the back. Yes.
Hi, everyone. Okay, great. Good evening. Thank you for an excellent panel. Lots to sort of take away and think about, especially in terms of public-private partnerships. Mr. Krishnan, my question is to you, sir. It was very encouraging, very affirming to hear you talk about collaboration and cooperation at the summit. And my question is just, we see a role for government, and I think we, to a large extent, see a role for the private sector. How can the civil society and, think tanks especially contribute to that conversation in the lead up to the summit, at the summit, in a way that is meaningful and can, form part of the solutions and the framework that comes out of the summit? Thank you.
I think, as I pointed out, we wanted it to be multi-stakeholder, so it's not just government and companies, but also civil society and academia. So we will clearly sort of make that space, and we will sort of set up mechanisms by which that consultation takes place. To be very honest, my ministry already does a lot of that. I mean, we are pretty open to. Sometimes I feel that we're probably spending more time consulting than doing. But no, I mean, on a more serious note, I think we love to hear, and it's good to get the feedback on a range of issues. And since you mentioned civil society, let me make an appeal to you that, AI governance is something which has come up now, but very related and linked to that is internet governance, for instance, which is in a multi-stakeholder format. And the participation from the Indian side, and in a multi-stakeholder format, the only way that you have more people in the room is by having multiple stakeholders representing a country like India. With 1 billion internet users, we hardly ever seem to find enough organizations in civil society, academia to represent. So probably there is a lot of space that you can actually take up, and presumably that will happen in AI governance as well. Thank you.
Very encouraging. So we have one lady here. First, yes. Yeah. And then we have one at the back. We'll take that and then we'll come again. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Oh, it works. Good afternoon. My name is Shiko Gitao. I'm from Kenya. And my question should be quite obvious, right? This is the Global South AI Summit. Yeah? And I'm quite excited about it. In fact, I was in Paris when they announced that it's coming to India, and I was quite excited about it. And I'm feeling like all the questions are going to you. What are the actions you're going to take to have a more collaborative, inclusive summit that especially will touch on the Global South challenges? And I mean, not hating on the other summits. I mean, we talked about safety and action, but when you speak to Africans, what safety are we talking about when you don't have the fundamentals of AI? What action is being taken when some of the announcements actually left out the reality of our continent? 2 days ago we were saying, and even this morning we were talking, somebody saying the realities of India and Africa are pretty much similar. I always tell people, I was in India when I made up my mind about going back home. I was working for Google, excited about my life, but India convinced me to go back home and solve Africa's problems. So how is this summit going to have a significant moving of the needle in terms of impact on how the rest of the world perceives the Global South and its contribution, or its impact on the AI conversations and impact? Thank you. Oh, I have an offer. I had noted in my head. So part of that offer, I always say when I go to somebody with a challenge, I always say, what's the offer? I'm part of a group of people who are very bullish about what AI can do on the African continent. I'm willing to bring this group of people to support in building a working group for the African continent on this summit. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that offer, honestly, and I think we would love to have you and the group at the AI Impact Summit in early next year. I think that will make a significant difference. I think from India's side, I think our commitment to the Global South in terms of making sure that this happens for the Global South is very strong. Our Prime Minister made sure that the G20 was expanded to include the African Union. That's a key element which happened. The second aspect which I think is very important is that this year the G20 is being chaired by South Africa, and we are in close contact with them to push forward both the DPI agenda and now the AI plus DPI agenda. That's important from India's perspective, and we believe that it can make a significant difference for the Global South. And the Social Impact Fund was also announced, and we are working on it. And incidentally, I had an excellent interaction with senior civil servants from the Kenyan government a couple of months ago when they were here, and we were figuring out ways in which we could collaborate on the DPI story. But clearly in the Impact Summit, the intention is to demonstrate impact wherever it is, and in particular, and the impact needs to be in two ways: one in governance and what impact it can make, and the other in terms of the broader economy, in terms of economic impact on the real sectors, including things like agriculture. So we would love to engage further on this to make sure how we can bring a broader constituency of stakeholders into this, and each summit grows bigger, and our target, and no summit can grow bigger without participation from Africa in particular, and we would reach out and make sure through the Ministry of External Affairs and make sure that there's adequate, in fact, considerably more participation from the African continent.
Thank you. I'll take one last question because, the time limit.
Just before I conclude, I may not have another chance to say this, but I just want to invite all present in this room to the summit next year, because we might run out of time before.
And thanks for being inclusive. And I think I have to be inclusive to the back side of the room. So just one last question from the gentleman in white shirt.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. And I really want to thank all the esteemed members of the panel for sort of charting out a very inspiring vision. for impact. And just to sort of, I wonder if this is best posed to Secretary Krishnan or to Nitarshan, but the question goes something like this. And to extend Sunil's example of the villager that can use AI to listen to their favorite author in their language, there is also a flip side to that where a scammer could use the same model to clone the villager's daughter's voice and scam them out of money. And I wonder if impact defined thus can be approached from both a human flourishing point of view and also a human security point of view. The question for Secretary Krishnan would be something like, how can we make technical professionals in India who want to work on these problems, how can they get involved with India's AI mission? And to Nitarshan, it would be something like, what's the best way to research on these problems outside of frontier labs, which are, generally more well-resourced?
Darshan, why don't you go ahead?
I'll almost steal the first question a bit, actually. So, I mean, the way that we, and for that specific thing around like scamming or like crime, that's the sort of thing that the UK AI Security Institute also looks at in addition to catastrophic and existential risks. But the way that we set this up in the UK is that we created something that was, treated as a crisis situation or an emergency situation. So we modeled the creation of the AI Safety Institute on the vaccines task force from COVID. And then we had this body, we brought in outsiders, including myself and people from venture capital, people from industry, and we had this body report directly to the Prime Minister. So it instantly became like a highly prestigious thing. The Prime Minister, like Rishi, spent time recruiting people, right? He spent minutes of his time like just, talking to people and being like, you need to come join this thing. And we were able to convince people to leave DeepMind, to leave OpenAI. We had people who were going to go to Anthropic but chose to go to the AI Security Institute as well. So it was very prestigious. It wasn't competing on pay. It was competing on mission and public service, in a sense that like you would actually have impact because you were at the center of the power structure of the British government, and you knew you'd be taken seriously, and you were being given like exceptional civil servants to work alongside in like really like cohesive blended teams. So that was like really critical for the success of getting the right talent, people who could be making like tens of millions of dollars elsewhere to go into government, right? Extremely unusual in and of itself. And then giving them like the flexibility and the latitude to find the right problems and be empowered in pursuing them. And because the starting conditions were so good, that's why the AI Security Institute in the UK is like continuing to be a success. And I think those starting conditions are essential. Like if you don't have those, you're not going to be able to have the impact that you want.
Now, clearly, impact involves both positive and negative elements of impact, and therefore we have to address both. And safety of individuals, safety from being scammed by all of this is an important element of how we are addressing the whole cybersecurity question as well. Within the AI mission, there is a vertical which deals with safety, and we do call for proposals on an ongoing basis, and we receive many proposals, and clearly it's a very popular effort. So I think the next time that this is called for and the AI Kosh, the portal has all of the details, and you should participate, or the institute that you're looking at should participate. In addition, there are also details of research and other projects on the safety aspect which have already been awarded. There are about 5 or 6 projects which have been awarded, and if you would like to contribute to one of those, it should be possible, because those details are also up there. So, we are not in any way underplaying the risk, and we believe that awareness and knowledge about the technology is probably the greatest defense that you can have, and that's something which we work on as part of not just the AI mission, but part of the overall capacity building program that the ministry runs.
Sure, thanks. Responsible AI, governance in AI, they are definitely my favorite topics. But again, I'm reminded Saturday evening, so maybe we'll talk it again later. Let me summarize. Today we talked about the AI Summit, which we are going to have in February, the theme being impact. Some of the key things which came up is, number one, we should not throttle the opportunity. We have to seize the opportunity. Inclusive for citizens of the Global South, so that all are included and are heard, and we jointly create a plan. Let the million flowers bloom. We heard that. and investments, which is conversion of investments, and make things fruitful for the entire global south. DPI to the power of AI, and that we should take the opportunity to make that happen. So those are the themes, takeaways for us. And I thank you, Secretary Sir, thank you Sunil, thank you Andre, thank you Nitarshan for being there and enlightening us on the way forward. Bye.